Hello everyone. I know it has been a while since I posted, but recently I went back to school. I'm now in my senior year, finally. And right now you are seeing my Wattpad. I don't know if anyone else still uses it, but yeah. Uh, this is my Wattpad and all that stuff. Right now I'm working on a new book called The Last Harbinger. Here it is. Right now it only has 4 parts, but I am working on chapter 5. It is a draft. And today I will be reading chapter 1 and chapter 2, mostly because this is for my brother since he apparently cannot read to himself and would rather have someone else reading it to him. And yeah. So if I pause for a little bit, that might be because I am taking a drink, because my voice does kind of hurt today. I don't know why, but yeah. But I'll be reading chapter 1 and chapter 2 today, and maybe I'll do another post tonight with chapter 3 and 4, but I don't know. We shall see. So let's get into it. Chapter 1. Harsh Training. Moss had lived in Harbor Bay all her life. She never really knew her mother or father. All she knew was that she was born to a Miranda and Zane Harbinger. Moss found it funny since she shared a last name with a villain named Harbinger. It was weird for a villain to have that name. However, Moss was a bit naive and clueless, since she had always been protected and sheltered her whole life by another hero who worked in the Opal Hall named Red. Red worked for Opal Hall for years, basically the dog of Opal Hall. As of now, Moss was entering the Opal Hall. Everyone knew who she was, the face of Opal Hall. So familiar with her dyed purple hair, those emerald green eyes, and most importantly, that beautiful jade necklace around her pale throat. Her skin was like a vampire's, so pale and tiresome, as well as skinny, but not to the point you could see her bones. After all, she was a hero, and heroes were supposed to be strong. At least, that's what Red says anyways. Eventually, Moss enters the Opal Hall's training grounds. The training grounds were bare and empty, the white walls so sterile. Moss sighed, seeing Red. He was intimidating, at least. Golden eyes burning into her. His brown hair neatly combed back. His red-yellow suit stretched across his body. Moss huffed, already annoyed as she spoke. Ugh, Red, I don't want to do this. Haven't I already done enough training? Train someone else. Red narrowed his eyes, his irritation already spiking, so early in the morning as he spoke annoyed. You don't have a choice. It's your first day as a hero and we want you to be ready, so do your job or are the hair dye fumes getting to you? Red boomed out with a huff, causing Moss to tense up. Moss was never good with defending herself from Red. Red was always the mean one. He never let her rest, even though he was supposed to be like a stepfather to her. Moss frowned and glanced at the ground and muttered, Yeah, you're right. Her voice was small and quiet. She took the spear from his hand that he had gotten from the stands nearby. She started to train and practice with Red. However, Red wasn't merciful. He had beaten her into a bloody pulp, almost breaking her jaw. Red had been doing this to her ever since she was 5. Red scoffed, muttering loud enough for her to hear. Pathetic. I guess you'll never channel your powers. Whatever, just get cleaned up and go on patrol tonight, 12 to 4 a.m. Moss grunted. She had never worked that late, but she knew this was punishment for failing her dueling challenges. Red then glanced back, throwing some of her hearing aids at her, the special ones, specifically made for her and her only, the ones that lowered noise sensitivity since her ears were too sensitive, and he mumbled, "Try not to die, you brat." Moss frowned, but got up, trying not to cry. After all, she was a hero, and heroes don't cry, they fight. So Moss got into a purple and gold suit, a very lavender purple that she hated. She liked deep purples more. As well, she had to have her hair up as well, and Moss really hated that the most. As well as the student... as well as the uncomfortable chest plate that added weight. But eventually Moss left to the harbor bay to start her night shift that was wrongfully brought onto her. Yeah, so that was chapter 1. Sorry for messing up a few words, but I don't usually read to people. I usually just write the story and expect them to read it. But anyways, I'm gonna pause real quick and then we'll be on chapter 2, okay? Chapter 2, The Night Shift. Moss sighed as she sat on the top of the clock tower's roof. She was bored. She didn't want to sit here and be stuck doing nothing. Honestly, it was ridiculous. Why the hell did Red even want to push her to her limits? Why does he even want her to channel her powers? Like, what's so important about that? Red was supposed to care about her, but all he cares about is her stupid powers. Moss was irritated beyond disbelief. It hurt so much. Moss only ever knew Red. Red was supposed to care about her, but all he cared about was her power, and why she hasn't channeled it yet. Moss frowned, sighing in defeat again as she muttered to herself, "Man, this night couldn't get any worse." As soon as she said that, there was a big explosion near the harbor beach. Luckily, Moss had in her sensitivity hearing aids, otherwise at this point, Moss would have gone deaf. Moss glanced over towards the beach, narrowing her eyes to look towards the beach to see if she could spot anything. And that's when she saw this disgusting alien-like creature. The creature was like a larva that was disgustingly slimy in a sense. It was destroying everything in its path. The monster screeched and Moss gagged at it. It was hideous, like something you find on the bottom of your shoe. Moss mumbled to herself, "You gotta be kidding me. I'm dealing with that disgusting thing? Ugh, let's get this over with." Moss stood up from waiting on the clock tower and jumped down carefully, landing on her feet onto the ground, stretching out her limbs to make sure she wasn't stiff. Letting out a small huff, unsure about this. Moss had no superpowers, at least not yet. She was still working on channeling them, so she was kind of nervous. Moss had never fought alone before. What was she supposed to do if she couldn't save anyone? Or what if she got hurt and couldn't escape? Moss shuddered and shook her head, mumbling to herself, No, I can do this." Moss took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves, suddenly forgetting all her moves. As she made her way towards the larva monster, Moss made it towards the harbor beach where a boy stood, the baker's son named Ryan. He was about 14, 2 years younger than Moss. Moss had always found Ryan a bit suspicious, and he smirked at her as he spoke, his voice delicate and creepy. "You know, Mother wouldn't let me do my science experiment, so I turned her into the science experiment." Moss grunted, noticing a bit of blood on Ryan's sleeves, and then glanced up at the huge larva, noticing a body in the middle of the larva. Moss then glanced back at Ryan, seeing such a sadistic look in his as he tilted his head slightly, speaking again. What's wrong, Supernova? You look a little nauseous. I thought you were supposed to be a hero. Moss narrowed her eyes. She hated her superhero name. Supernova? What was that even supposed to mean? And why did they even give her that name? Moss shook her head, needing to stay focused on the problem at hand. Moss huffed, muttering out very unenthusiastically, "You won't get away with this." Moss immediately shot up, trying to stab the larva with a knife she had grabbed from her golden belt skirt, only to be slapped down by the larva, now covered in a sticky, disgusting mess. Moss grunted and gagged, hating every second of this. Moss immediately stood, slipping a little due to the disgusting, slimy stuff that the larva had left behind. Immediately, Moss tried to stab at the larva again, only to be slapped harshly down again. The larva seemed to have broken a few things as Moss let out a gasp of pain. Ryan, standing near the sideline, smirked as he spoke again. "Man, you're not really strong. What a joke. You're supposed to be the face of Opal Hall, and this is all you got?" Ryan laughed, finding the situation hysterical, that he hadn't noticed someone behind him. Ryan spoke again. "Honestly, I'm sure they could find someone even better to take your place," only to be cut off by a voice. Harbinger's voice. He wore a mask that was a deep purple, and it had a voice module to change the voices of the person wearing the mask. "And you should know better than to compete with villains." Harbinger wore a deep purple and black armored suit, covering all his body and face. He more so wore boots with a skinny heel. As he tapped a button on his wrists, missiles were suddenly launched from a nearby helicopter. The missiles hit the larva harshly, destroying the larva. The larva exploded and slime and guts were everywhere. Ryan was absolutely devastated, while Harbinger, on the other hand, was a smirking mess. And he glanced at Ryan. He crouched down due to the fact he was at least 6 feet tall, and he spoke to Ryan. "Well, kid, it seems you're alone on this one. Now go home to your father." Ryan frowned and turned around, his head slumped low as he started to walk away. Harbinger glanced at Moss and frowned underneath his mask as he saw she had passed out. So he sighed, crouching down to touch her neck to find her pulse. Harbinger let out a sigh of relief as he found the heartbeat, muttering, "Good. Well, perhaps another time, my dear." Harbinger then stood and left. That's when Red showed up, finding Moss, and he frowned, grumbling, "Pathetic. I should get you back to the medical bay." Red picked up Moss and took her back to the Opal Hall. Once there, he took her to the medical bay and laid her down on the bed, getting the doctors to work on her. So once she awoken, she wouldn't be in pain. Red narrowed his eyes, mumbling, "When she awakes, she'll have some harsh training to do." Red turned his body tense and irritated with how things had gone. Moss was supposed to win, not just fail. Perhaps he hadn't trained her hard enough. Well, he'll make sure she doesn't fail again. And that is the end of chapter 2, and that is all I will be reading for now. Maybe I will record chapter 3 and 4 later and post them tonight separately. I don't know. We'll see. But anyways, I hope you enjoy, and bye-bye!